Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about how we were geographically separated while we were in the military. So our last video we talked about how we met and how hard it was for us to kind of decide what we were going to do. Well, how hard it was for me, he already knew what he wanted, but just knowing that we both had to deploy and we had to, I was going to be going to Korea in November. It was really hard for me to figure out what I wanted to do, if we wanted to commit, if I wanted to commit, I say we, but if I wanted to commit, if I wanted to break up and go my own way. So we ended up getting married in August, and we spent a month together. We went on our honeymoon. We went on a 3-day honeymoon. We did engagement. That month was so funny because it was so different from what a lot of people do, from like your traditional like getting engaged, engagement photos, and then get married and honeymoon. I think we got married, we got engaged, we got married by a justice of the peace. It was really funny because it was so last minute. We called all of our friends up. I think we decided Sunday night, didn't we? We were gonna get married.
Yeah, we drove to the courthouse to get it because we were allowed to do it because you're military.
No, it was all the same day. We did everything same day. I think it was Monday night we decided. I told my boss that morning, I said, we're gonna go get married. I need to go to the courthouse during lunch and get we had to go, because we called the justice of the peace. He said we had to go to the courthouse and get the paperwork for the wedding, and then he would officiate the wedding. And so we went around, I think it was at 5:30 on the 5th. It was Tuesday the 5th, and so we went and got married. And like our friendship, it was really funny. Like people from my work showed up, people from our church, like because we called him at like 3 o'clock. We're like, hey, we're getting married, and they all showed up. It was crazy. So we did that. I want to call it a shotgun wedding because it happened so fast, but I think a shotgun wedding is done under other circumstances, which were not our circumstances. But it was a fast wedding, and probably the closest thing to, what do you call it? Eloping that I'll ever get to. I've always wanted to elope, so I guess that's about as close as I'm ever gonna get.
Oh no, everybody was surprised.
Yeah, everyone was very surprised. So we ended up getting married, and I think we had about his mom, his mom, when I say everybody, I mean more like his mom. So his mom, I think she really wanted a ceremony that she could come to. So we were like, hey, if you want to come to this ceremony on such and such a day, you can. And a lot of people came from all over the place, and we had our wedding, which I don't, like looking back, I would never do that again. Like we would have just had a justice of the peace. And looking back, I think I probably would never have done an official wedding ceremony. To me, it was just a complete waste of money and a waste of time. It was so stressful because
not for the wedding part, just because we had to do it for everybody else.
Yeah, I think a justice of the peace was enough. That's really all we needed, because I was so stressed out. Like I couldn't enjoy it, trying to plan a wedding, finish up master's classes, process a base to move overseas, pack up our home to move overseas, get him deployed. Like it was just so much on our plate. I really wish I had just enjoyed that time.
Don't forget that we didn't even get to dance because they shut everything down by the time we were done with our pictures.
The photographer she wasn't bad, but she was like getting all these wedding pictures, and so by the time like we were able to get out there, people were leaving. It was just nuts. It was nuts. Anyway, so I think and then we went on, I think that following weekend we went on our honeymoon to Galveston, and we did what might look like engagement photos, but they weren't really engagement photos because we were married. I don't know, it was weird. It was not in the proper order, but we did get it all done, so I guess that counts. And then
later that week I left.
Yeah, and so we got back because we went over Labor Day weekend, and then on this, I think it was the 6th, which was probably a week later, like a Thursday or Friday, he deployed, and I dropped him off and then left. And then that's when I had to continue packing everything up in our apartment and put it in storage, all that.
That's when it's like an 18-hour flight. So I'd been up all day, flew 18 hours, and still was up for another 8 hours afterwards. So I was up for like probably 48 hours by the time we got there. I called her, talked to her just so that I know I was there, and then we passed out, and then we just kind of got hit the ground running. Honestly, the worst trip of my life. Like, most of the people I didn't like working with. It was just being separated. It was extremely hard.
It was a hard trip.
I like the only positives I would say from that trip were you getting to come. She took leave en route to Korea. Spent 2 weeks in Guam with me, and I had saved up a bunch of time off, and we just got to hang out for 2 weeks in a hotel.
No, you still went to work.
Did I?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we would.
Oh yeah, we had the last 4 days off.
Mm-hmm. Let me say this part real fast.
Okay.
It was after he left. It was really, really hard. And hold on, I'm trying not to say "and" as much or have all these transitions. After he left, I was finishing I was getting ready to go to Korea. That's when I thought, oh my God, how do people do this that have kids? And I kept thinking, oh my God, what would I do if we had kids? Who would keep my kids? But I didn't trust anyone in my family to keep my children, and I didn't know his family well enough. So all I could think of is, I don't want to be in this situation again. And I knew that I was going to have to get out because I didn't want to, or one of us was going to have to get out. And after talking about it, we decided I would, because we wanted to keep it traditional. We didn't want to have it where I was working and he was at home. So the only issue we had was I had follow-on orders to Turkey, the country of Turkey, after Korea. And that was 3 years total. I think with Korea and Turkey, I would be gone overseas for 3 years. So the cool thing that happened, my assignment counselor, the girl that was in charge of all of my paperwork and making sure everything was done right, she actually messed up my paperwork. And when they did the extension, I think they only did it for 12 months, but I needed it it was a month short. Whatever the extension was, it was a month short. And so they called me and said, hey, you need to come back and re-sign this extension because we have to fix it. And it was at that point I knew that it was a God thing, that I could, because at that point I could either, the paperwork that I had already signed was void because the extension was wrong. So I had the choice now to either turn down orders to Turkey or to sign paperwork to go for the proper amount of time. And I just turned down the orders to Turkey, but that also meant that I couldn't re-enlist. It also meant that it meant a lot of things. So basically I would be separating from the military on my date of separation, which was March. And so I just turned down orders to Turkey and decided that I was going to get out. But we still had to make it through that year in Korea. The blessing in all of it was that I was still able to go visit him in Guam for 2 weeks. On my way to Korea, I had called the girl that was doing my orders and I said, hey, is this a thing I can do? And she said yes. So all I had to do was get a few extra signatures, and the Air Force basically paid for me to fly from the US to Guam. I stayed in Guam for 2 weeks and then I flew to Korea. Basically we got a hotel. The Air Force paid for my plane ticket to go, but we had to pay for everything else while we were in Guam. We got a hotel for 2 weeks. What all did we do? We got a hotel for 2 weeks. We rented a car. We ate out a lot. Well, we did go we went to the commissary on base and we bought a lot of food to live out of in a hotel, like things you can microwave, sandwiches, breakfast cereal, milk, that sort of thing. But basically we would get up at 4:30 every morning and I would drive him to work and drive back, and I would spend 12 hours by myself, which was really fun because I got to see a lot of which I don't even know what I did all day. I think I did drive around and go see different things on the island and on the base, but for the most part, I don't remember what I did. But it was neat. I think you
were stressed out, so I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, and Guam is a really interesting. I did go to the library on base. I think it's Anderson Air Force Base. I went to the library and I read about Chamorro culture and Polynesia. I learned a lot about the colonization of the Pacific not by Europeans, but by the native peoples that lived there before. It was really, really interesting. A lot of stuff I never knew. So I did that, and we visited the island. There was one time we actually almost got swept out to sea. It had been raining a lot in Guam those for I guess the weeks before I got there.
It was rainy season and warm.
And so the way that the island is, the north part of the island is really high, and then it slowly goes down, and the south part is
The lowest part.
it's low. Well, we were driving on the south part. It was so weird. It doesn't make sense now. Knowing what I know, I'm like, I never would have said this. But when he got off work early one day, and I said, hey, let's drive around the island, even though it's raining.
It was pouring.
It was pouring, and so we stopped by this place called Talifofo Falls, and you take a sky bucket down there, and it's this beautiful little trickling stream, but it was already coming down pretty hot. The waterfall was pretty heavy when we got down there, and then we got to one side and we were just walking around, and then within 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, so we had to actually stop recording the video. So if there's kind of a weird transition or something different about this video, it's because we actually are filming this.
You can say that. I'm gonna put my glasses on. So it doesn't look funny.
Okay,
I can't see now. I can see now.
there's a glare off your glasses. Okay, so basically
Sorry.
we had to start filming this after the kids went to bed because things got wild earlier in the day. So if there's any weird transitions between what you just saw and now, it's because of that. So anyway, we were talking about our trip around the islands. We have been raining all day, for the last couple of weeks, yeah. And we decided to go on this trip around the island, and we went to this place called Talifofo Falls, which is a very interesting place. Normally the waterfall is, it's a gentle waterfall with a stream, but when we got there, it was actually pretty strong, and we took a sky bucket down, and then we got to the ground and we crossed the bridge, and we were looking. There was it's not the actual site, but there is a replica site of this Japanese soldier who had basically been lost on the island for years. I guess he was there like I think 50 years. I could be wrong, but he basically survived in the jungle of Guam for 50 years, and they actually had to get the Emperor of Japan to write a letter to him saying the war is over, you have to come out now. And I think he lived underground, and so they had dug out a hole and did all that stuff. But basically, I think that's the story. But I do know he lived in there for a really long time, and he had no idea the war was over. He thought we were still fighting the war. So anyway, we saw that little monument to that guy, and I think we walked down the trail and came back, and when we came back, there were rapids, like I would say whitewater, but they were really muddy, so it was like really muddy. I mean, it was bad. We actually couldn't take the sky buckets up. The bridge we had crossed, you couldn't even see it. The water was so crazy. Where we walked earlier, but now you can't get anywhere because both exits are overrun with water, and the sky buckets were flooded, and so we actually ended up going up this really
scary, one of the workers' trucks.
Yeah, and like it was so wet, like he could barely even get up, and I thought we were gonna die. Like it was scary, but we actually did end up getting back to our car, thank God, and we were okay. But then we almost died again. So we drove, we were just following everybody else. We were driving on the south side of the island, which is like the lowest. I mean, it literally is almost level with the sea.
Well, you rounded the bottom tip of the thing and coming back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went down the bottom half of the island, and we crossed, there was just like standing water, and we crossed it, and thankfully nothing happened.
It's still pretty deep though.
It was really deep. Thankfully he knew how to drive across it, but then we were gonna go, everyone was turning around, which we should have taken as a sign, but we didn't. And so we get to this next one, and I mean, it looks like a river. but we're like, we can do it. But then there was this bus.
Well, I was like, maybe not.
Yeah, I think you were gonna turn around, but I was like, we can do it. But there was this school bus, and I really think this was a God thing, that the school bus got stuck, and there were...
It's up to the top of the
Like
hood of the bus,
yeah.
which is about 4 or 5 feet up.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty high, and there were just like grown men, I'm guessing it was the bus driver, like had kids on his back, and he was hauling these kids through the water to, I mean, it was a good 20 or 30 feet that he was hauling these kids on his back. So we turned around and went home. We're like, we'll try this adventure another day. And we actually did end up going back to that area when it had, and it was actually a really beautiful area. It was actually one of the first areas where, I want to say Magellan, but I could be wrong. It was some explorer.
Magellan.
Was it him? It was one of the first explorers contacted the Chamorros. We also did a kayaking trip on a very gentle river. We got to see what life was like for the Chamorros, the kind of villages they lived in. Like, it was a really neat cultural experience.
Don't forget about the jet ski and like the super stormy water.
That was on the second trip.
Oh, I can't remember.
And then we did a submarine. We got to go down into a submarine, and that was scary. I don't like that, because I'm like, what if, I think I've just seen too many movies. I think I watched Titanic one too many times. So yeah, we did that, and he had the weekends off, but we would get up at 4:30 every morning and drop him off, and then I would kind of hang out for the day and then come back and pick him up. And then I had to go, I think I stayed exactly 2 weeks, and then I had to go back to Korea. I had a flight from Guam straight to Korea, and it was hard because I was really excited. It was such a weird thing because I had everything I wanted, but they weren't together. So I was married, and I was living overseas. Like, the two things that I wanted, but they were not. We were not together, and that was not cool. So,
it was just a rough time. There was a lot of growing both of us needed to do.
Yeah, I really think that it was God's time, and just let me say, you can have everything you want, but I don't know. I can't put into words, but it was just kind of, I think it was a time where I had to learn to pray for things and wait for God, because sometimes, like, his plan is always in action for your life, but sometimes you can hijack the car, and then you have to live with the choices, and it affects you, because I think it did affect me for a long time. Like, the disappointment and sadness that I felt really affected my mood towards our whole relationship, even after I got back.
I didn't know that.
I think so. I think just I don't know. I guess I was like frustrated with the situation and all that. It was hard, but we got through it. We spent a lot of time on Skype, and it wasn't too bad, because for like the first November to March, so however many months that is, was that 4 or 5 months that I was...
The rest of my trip in Guam.
Yeah, 4 months, I would say, that I was in Korea. He was only 5 hours time difference, and so he was actually on night shift and I was on day shift, so it actually worked out really well because our schedules were kind of synced. So when I was there at night, when I was home at night, he was home in the morning or getting off work, and then the weekends worked out. The only bad thing is that he had roommates, so it was really weird trying to talk and have a conversation with other people in the room.
Okay, you have to come for a Super Bowl weekend.
Yeah, it's really funny. So where I worked, we had staff meetings, and people didn't know how to sit. I mean, we would go, literally a staff meeting that should take like 20 minutes, sometimes took up to an hour and a half. And so I would always like plan my weekends or plan things out during that time. And one like the week before Super Bowl weekend, I was sitting in staff meeting. I thought, hey, I bet I could fly to go see Steven this week, because they actually give us, because
you're so far ahead, Super Bowl Sunday is Monday for people overseas in the
Pacific.
Yeah.
Once they approved me to go, I bought a ticket, and for like $1,000, I got like business class, and I went to Seoul Airport. So I think I got on the bus around noon and went to Seoul Airport. I got there by 3. I think my flight left around 5 or 6. And the line was so long. I thought, oh my God, I'm never gonna get through. But I think because I had bought a business class ticket, they actually let me go first. And so I gotta like skip the whole line and like check in or maybe it's, I don't know. Anyway, somehow I got to do that. It was a total God thing. Got on the plane, we left, and then I got there probably around midnight. I think it was like a 4 or 5 hour flight. And then it was the same thing leaving Guam on Monday.
It was Monday at 5 because we got there super early.
It was a night, yeah, it was a nighttime flight. Cause I remember checking out of our hotel, and then we went back to your room and we hung out. And I think we had to, you to take me to the airport.
We got dinner and then we went to the airport.
Yeah, we went to the airport. You dropped me off.
Which the 2 times I had to drop her off were awful.
That was hard. That was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like talking about it. But anyway, you dropped me off. You dropped me off, and I slept. Thankfully, I'm so thankful I have business class because I could like lean back. Like the seats were so comfortable. They had alcohol, which was, I just had a couple glasses of wine and that helped me sleep. And so we flew through the night. We landed in Seoul, I think around 5 or 6 in the morning. And then I took the bus back, and I had to be at work by noon. And so I pretty much like got back, went to my room, changed, and went, and they're like,
I didn't know you did that.
yeah, so I really only had like 4 or 5 hours of sleep on a flight, and then I went back to work.
Then after that, I finished up my trip. We came back, and I moved into a apartment. It was just like a single apartment, and one of my, like our mutual friend, the one that invited us, and who was my best man, said, "Hey, we got orders. Come stay at our house. We'll let you stay here for free. Just help us out with chores, and then you can just take over the lease afterwards." And then, she had 2 weeks of. No, she had a month. In Korea, you get a month of, what is it called again? The leave.
I don't know what it's called, but it's basically like
you get a month off, so you can.
Yeah, so you can kind of go see your family, or you get a month to just go. Some people fly home, some people fly their family into Korea.
So I flew all the way to Korea, and then
This
we got.
is in July.
Yeah, we got an entire month together. So we got there, and her dorm room, the apartment, whatever you say.
Well, let's say what we did first. His first meal was at McDonald's in Seoul.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
We went to.
Which was really interesting.
No, well, we ate on base. We stayed at the main army base there. It was a really nice hotel. Remember? Crazy. While we were there, I think we took a tour.
DMZ.
And we went to some temple. So we went to like some temple that they had there, a couple of the different palaces. We got lost, and it is not fun trying to talk to someone whose language is not even similar to yours.
Did we get lost?
We did. Remember, there was like this huge palace.
Oh, you're talking about the one with all the wooden village that we walked around, and we found that whole like that tiny restaurant that had no English. We had to actually have another customer.
No, that was in Kunsan.
Was it?
Yeah.
It all done together.
Yeah, we got lost a lot. We spent at
like
least 4 or 5
7
days.
years ago.
Yeah, it's been like 7 years. So we spent a couple days in Seoul, which was really fun. We went to that temple. We went to a couple different palaces from the kings that lived there. We ate out a lot. They have really good food. Oh my gosh. I think the only reason I want to go back to Korea is because they have a lot of really good food. And then we went back to Kunsan and stayed in my dorm room.
Which had no air conditioning.
Oh my gosh. And so it gets so hot there in the summer, and I'm trying to stop saying that. It gets so hot there in the summer. My dorm room, the air conditioner broke throughout the whole building, and there's probably several hundred people that live in that building. I'm guessing it reached upwards of like 95.
Remember we stayed
or 100 degrees inside the room. We did. We actually went to go sleep in the chapel because that's where I worked, and so we just went and slept in there because it was air conditioning.
Then we decided to go. We were gonna go to Jeju Island, but there was a typhoon.
There was a typhoon coming, so we
got to the airport,
and they said the flights were canceled and they would refund us our money.
So we made a snap decision to go to Busan. We took their travel. Their buses are amazing. They're super comfortable. They have awesome stops. They stop to get food and everything else.
Yeah.
And we got there, and it was in the middle of the typhoon. Like, they use coral in their walkways, so it's like slippery as oil. Like, we were like trying to walk through our thing in like rain and wind, and it was just like crazy.
So we stayed at this hotel by the sea, and I think we left the hotel room to get food. I think the rest of normal people.
We walked around at night too, just to see the sights.
Yeah, but we really probably didn't go more than like 15 minutes from our hotel room. And I think we were just so tired. I think I was just so exhausted from working and like just the whole the lifestyle of being in the military. I thought, man, I don't want to leave this bed. And the last week we were there, we went back to my room, my dorm room on base, but the problem was the air conditioning was still broken. They were also going to do an exercise, which I'm sure if you can probably just Google and you'll find out. It's basically
Practice.
stuff in case bad
What
things
did you do?
happen. And then we went back to my dorm room right before the exercise kicked off. And I thought, man, I don't want to.
Oh, you didn't have to go to the exercise, remember? Because you were still on leave.
I
so,
was on leave, so I didn't have to do the exercise. But
so you just got to walk around.
I also didn't want to. Well, we left before then. I didn't want to be stuck in a room with no air conditioning, and two, I didn't want to be on base because everything shuts down.
That's when we went to Busan. Was that?
No, we ended up going back to Seoul. Remember?
Oh yeah, you're right.
And then we went to the DMZ because I think they had just opened it back up. I think it was closed.
There's actually some, I think, Taiwanese and Thai people on the North Korean side that were looking back at us. It was really kind of ironic.
It's kind of weird. It was when you go there, it's a really it's a weird experience because you realize, when you're in America, you don't normally think of war and life and death. But then like when you're there, you see North Korean soldiers. You see these poor emaciated kids, and then
they'll turn their back to you. They don't look at you. They always look towards their own side of the country. You can walk to where they do the peace treaty talks. Mm-hmm. You can technically be on the North Korean side, but they're like, I wouldn't do it too much.
Yeah, it's really sad. The things that it's really humbling.
They also showed us all like the propaganda stuff they did, all the fake villages and the loudspeakers that the South Koreans used. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then after that, I had to leave and come back here, which is another hard trip. But the blessing was, after that, you got to come home early. You want to tell them that part?
Oh yeah. I had to separate on my day of separation, which would have been March of 2016.
Yeah.
I would have been out, and so that would have put me almost. We would have been separated for 1.5 years at that point, and I just thought, I don't want to do that. And I had a lot of leave saved up. Leave is also vacation time in the military, they call it leave. I had a lot of that saved up. I had almost 3 months saved up. Well, at the time, I thought I had a replacement coming in, and then, but there would have been 4 of us. And normally there's only 3. Yeah, they would have been overmanned. They only have 3 offices. And I thought, I just don't want to be, 1, I just didn't want to be there any longer than I had to be. And 2, I didn't want to be working. I wouldn't have had an office. What was I supposed to do? And I was just kind of done with everything at that point. So I put in the paperwork, and I pretty much told all the reasons that it was going to be inconvenient to the Air Force to keep me. And so they let me separate on the day that I would have left Korea had I agreed to go to Turkey, which would have been November 30th. And so they let me separate from the military on November 30th. And then all my leave, my almost 90 days of leave, I got to take before then. So I actually ended up coming home September 23rd, and I had all that.
Okay.
I had all that leave.
I remember that because you got here before November. I remember because we were going up to visit my dad in November that year.
So that's what happened with that. I got to, and then I just had all that time.
But after that, I got a lot better, and that was our year apart.
That was hard. I wouldn't do it again, but we grew from it.
Yeah.
And I have learned, I want to go back overseas, but now I just pray, Lord, your will be done. You know my heart, you know my dreams, but your will be done. 'Cause I don't want to hijack my life again. So yeah, that is our story of the first 1.5 years together, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
It was not an easy first couple years, and I don't think it started getting easier until probably we moved into this house. Even then it was hard.
I think it's just hard. We had a lot of counseling. That helped a lot.
Well, I think the military is hard. Just being in the military in general. Like, I feel like things are a lot easier now that you're home, and I don't feel like I'm doing things by myself. And I think things are just easier when you're here. there's a reason it's called the service, because it is a sacrificial lifestyle and everybody sacrifices. And I think it's good now that you're home and you're not having to deploy. Thankfully, we didn't have to deal with another deployment. That was a blessing. People always wanted to go. Yeah, people, I think, because like there's not a lot of deployments here, so people are excited to get out when they can't go on a deployment and do something different. So we talked a lot on Skype, and we watched movies together.
That's when we started doing Audible afterwards.
Well, we did start watching movies together. We watched Once Upon a Time, but then we got tired of that because it just seemed like the same story.
It's a repetitive story.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same storyline. And then we watched Castle together.
Which I got her into.
What did we watch that on? Was it Netflix?
We watched it on Amazon because we still own all the seasons on there.
Was it? Okay, so yeah.
Because we watched it and then you got back and we bought the last season.
So we would log in and then we'd press play at the same time, and then we would keep Skype up and watch it together.
So, and then if we couldn't, we'd call. We tried to talk. I think we actually we could talk every day, even if it was just a phone.
Yeah.
Because it helped. It sucks being apart.
Yeah, it was hard. I really wish I had traveled more, but then I don't know how I don't know. I really wanted to talk to him, so I don't know. It just was a weird situation. I hope COVID clears up soon and we can travel again and life can go back to normal, because I really want to go back overseas. Korea, Japan, they're such amazing countries. So anyway, we're gonna get off here because I gotta get this video edited and out for next week. But I hope you enjoyed our story, and thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.